Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sparkle. Harriet Tubman from a family perspective, in conversation with her 3 times great-grandniece, Ernestine Wyatt. So happy to have you joining us on this special occasion as we continue to celebrate Black History Month. And as you know, Sparkle is presented in collaboration with Silver Spring Village and Silver Spring Town Center. And I'm the executive director. I'm Lisa Martin of Silver Spring Town Center. We present Sparkle monthly, and on the second Tuesday, usually at 2 p.m. And our next month is about to be announced. Our next month's event, it's a special event later in the month on Friday the 28th. I'm just waiting on the paperwork from the Civic Building. Anyway, before we get started, because we have over 100 registrants, it's a very popular event. We had a wonderful program last night with Sandy Hassan, who does beautiful quilting work, and she's returning to be on a panel discussion that we have also as part of Black History Month. And that is As Long as I Have Breath in My Body, a panel of multidisciplinary artists exploring African-American art and social action. And that's hosted by Camilla Bryce Laporte on next Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Zoom. And I will put in the chat these registration links. We also have our Around the World Bazaar coming up on Friday, February 28th. And we have the ladies from Freed, female reenactors of distinction who reenact Civil War heroines' stories. I think Ernestine attended last year when we had the ladies performing. We also have Black Voices Through Poetry, hosted by SSTCI board member, poet Brenda Bunting, who I just saw came into the call. Welcome. We have other board members on this call too. I think I saw Ray Fudge, who hosted African American culinary traditions earlier in the month. So our Around the World Bazaar, Friday, February 28th, we also have 2 performance areas, including arts and culture from around the world, Akhmadova Dance Academy, Ballet Academy, Sutradhar Institute doing Indian dance, White House Dance Studios with Caribbean dance. We also have the Pocket Band doing reggae music. That's in the Great Hall. And then in the atrium, on the atrium stage, we have the Civil War heroines with Freed, female reenactors of distinction, Orfea, Bulgarian Women's Choir, and Black Voices Through Poetry, and then Around the World Comedy, as well as a couple of hands-on art activities and arts and craft exhibitors and food. So if you'd like to get a vendor space or a food vendor space, we still have some room. Just let me know at Lisa at silverspringtowncenter.com. And is there anyone from the village who'd like to give a plug about the village? Because since we have so many new people who may not be, maybe, oh, Doug, I see Doug here. Hi, Doug.
Hello.
Doug is the executive director of Silver Spring Village, and I've just spotlighted him. Okay, go ahead, Doug. Take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. For those, I know a lot of the registrants for this event are actually already Silver Spring Village members and volunteers. But for the rest of you who may not be as familiar with us, our business is reimagining life over 50. So what that looks like is we are a community building organization. We find ways for older adults to become more engaged with one another, more engaged with the communities around them. We produce nearly 1,000 social, educational, recreational, cultural, and health events every year. And for those who need a little bit of extra boost in staying in their homes and communities of choice and continuing to live independently, we provide over 2,000 volunteer services. We operate in zip codes 20901, 20910, and 20902 south and west of Wheaton Park. So if you are interested in learning more about us, I encourage you to look us up online at silverspringvillage.org. You'll find lots of information there, and also contact information if you'd like to get in touch and learn more about how you can either be a part of our community or also volunteer.
Okay, great. Thanks, Doug. Okay, so we will, okay, let me remove the spotlight. The sharing, I have to restart the share. So let's see. Is it coming? Oh gosh. I had the share going and now you can't see it, right?
I
Do you
can
see it?
see your desk.
Okay, here we go. Now you can see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, just before we get started, let me also remind you, we have a free ticket giveaway with Improbable Comedies, Sweet and Sour comedy show tomorrow night for all SSTCI friends. Friends are the $50 level and up donors. And you can just claim the tickets. We also have a running for a ticket giveaway for Shenyun on Tuesday, February 25th, as well as we're selling tickets and proceeds benefit SSTCI. So we will get started with our special guest. It's just amazing it's kind of like touching history to know Ernestine now and to speak with her about her aunt. And you know, it's amazing to have her here. So I'm just going to read her bio. I just have it. Here we go. Oh, thanks. Oh my goodness. I lost it in the process of getting into Zoom. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay. It's coming back up. Okay. Oh, no. It's all Zoom links now. Sorry. We have so many events going on. It's hard to keep everything. And I'll put links in the chat for our next programs that we have coming up. Anyway, we can get started. Ernestine Tina Martin Wyatt is a great grandniece of Harriet Ross Tubman. Tina learned the value of activism as a teenager by participating in an organized and peaceful protest, strategically ensuring that African American history and literature was included in the school's curriculum. Tina received her Bachelor's of Art in Studio Art and Art History from the University of Maryland. In addition, she earned her Master's of Art degree in Museum Studies from the George Washington University. As an artist, one of her artworks is in the permanent collection of the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of Maryland African American History and Culture. Tina had a long history as a registered nurse, not only focusing on patient health, but also on patient education. Following the thread in education, she also taught art to children in pre-K through sixth grades for the District of Columbia Public School system, where she was instrumental in implementing an object-based learning curriculum in partnership with the Smithsonian Department of Education. Tina seeks to promote the legacy of Harriet Ross Tubman One of the ways is as co-founder of Harriet Tubman Day, Washington District of Columbia. Through the Celebrate to Educate ceremony, she works to inspire and bring accurate awareness of Harriet Tubman's life, specifically the participation in the Civil War and her life in the nation's capital and surrounding areas. She continues to share Harriet Tubman's legacy through the various speaking engagements and her membership in the National Congress of Black Women San Gabriel Valley chapter, promoting her as a symbol for faith, freedom, family, and democracy. Currently, Tina is working on projects to implement Harriet's legacy in practical ways. Tina resides in Washington, D.C. with her husband and family. Welcome, Tina.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I'm glad to be here. Hello, everyone.
Great. Now I've got to find you. There you are, and I'm going to spotlight you instead of me. Yes. Okay, take it away. Thank you.
All right. I love this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about on Harriet. So I mean, there's so much to say about her, and so little time in order to be able to do that. So it's like trying to cram in the best of the best, but that's difficult to do. So the topic is my perspective as a descendant. So what I'll do is tell you a little bit about myself, my family, how we are related to her. And so let me see, where should I start? I'm a transplant. I'm from Buffalo, New York. And I've been here since 1978. But as growing up, my mother, because my relationship to Aunt Harriet is through my maternal line, and my mother was from Auburn, New York, as was her parents and mostly all of her side of the family. And when I say her side of the family, I'm talking about as opposed to my father's family, which is from the South. But her family, she and her family were from Auburn, New York. And we got there through Aunt Harriet, bringing our family to that region. Now, Aunt Harriet was born Araminta, and they called her Minty for short. But she was one of 9 children on the plantation or farm, as they called it in that region in Maryland. And so she had 8 brothers and sisters. Now, my relationship to her, because Aunt Harriet never had any children of her own, she adopted a child late in life when she married for the second time to Nelson Davis, who was a United States colored trooper in the 8th Regiment. That's when they adopted a daughter named Gertie. But until then, Aunt Harriet, everything, we're all of us are the different ones of us, nieces and nephews. We're related to her through her siblings. So we're her nieces and nephews. And in July of 2022, we had the bicentennial family reunion in Auburn, where just about everyone from the different lines of her family was there. And it was a really beautiful event. But I am related to her through one of her older sisters. 2 of her sisters were sold off, Lina and Soph. Soph was younger than Lina, and Soph had 1 child. Her brother, William Henry, who was also in the home at the time, gave testimony in Canada that she was sold away with her infant child still suckling at her breast. So through census and all those things, through coming through and lining up and all those things, we knew that Anne Marie was her child. That was that infant child that was left with her parents. So that's my relationship to Aunt Harriet. And but after that, I will talk about how my grandmother didn't talk about Aunt Harriet. My mother didn't talk about Aunt Harriet in the way that we would have lots of information about this or about that. And other descendants that we talked to, that was the same way. So it's like we all have the same orientation of not having and knowing a lot of just intimate personal knowledge. We have some, but not a lot. Aunt Harriet was, as you know, she was on the Underground Railroad. So when she, came to Auburn to live after everything, and then had different, she was the hub of the family. So if you go to Auburn and you see her house, let me see, do I want to go there right now? No, I don't. If you go there and see her house, she was the hub. That's where she brought all of the family to from Canada. I don't want to really get bogged down in this, in what I'm trying to do here by staying in connection with different things. But so I'll just, because it'll come to me. I don't usually talk like that. I'm usually more free speaking about different things as they come to me. But this image that you're seeing is an image of Aunt Harriet when she was a young woman. And you can see she has an elaborate dress on in comparison to what she normally would wear. Also, this was more than likely after the Civil War. Now, this was the auction photo between the Library of Congress and also the National Museum of African American History. So this was a beautiful, beautiful image. It's a little fuzzy. It's fuzzy to me, so I'm sure it's fuzzy to you. But if you can view the other picture that's very clear, you'll see that. Now I saw this image in person at the Library of Congress, and the photo album that it came from. The photo album that it came from was, I don't even think it was 5x7. The images themselves were more like 2x3 inches, or maybe 3x3, or 2x2. But they were very small. But the image itself is beautiful. The album itself was beautiful. It had beautiful decorations all over it, stones and things like that. So it was something that was very precious to the owner. And you can go to the next slide. Okay, before I go to this, I'll just follow up with one more thing with about my grandmother and how I did not know that my grandmother knew knew Aunt Harriet. I always knew that Aunt Harriet was a relative. I always knew that from the time I was little. But as you know, when you're looking at different people in your lives and looking at Aunt Harriet, who has now become so famous and so sought after. As a child, even though people knew who she was, and it was the same thing, but not like it is now. She wasn't a household name like she is now. Um, so whenever we talked, whenever I went home to my grandmother's house, which was every other week in Auburn, it wasn't that far from Buffalo. When we would go at least once a month or every other month, my grandmother would say, "Let's go visit Aunt Harriet." And when we would go, that meant we're going to go up to the property. We're going to go up to uh, what belonged to her and her property. Now, there, we saw different things, and I'm going to talk about the differences in the buildings that you'll see, um, and how that was confusing even for me as a child. But just remembering that she just was a person to me that was um, just like your aunts, your uncles. Uh, you might know something that they did that was great or good or something like that, but still, yet they're just your aunt and your uncle. You don't really understand the meaning that they have to the world or what the world thinks of them. And so that's how it was for me growing up. Um, and so when grandma would say, "Let's go visit Aunt Harriet," I would always think, "Well, why are you calling her Aunt Harriet? She's been dead long time ago. You didn't know her. So why would you call her Aunt Harriet?" Um, because that's when you say that, it means it's personal to you. Uh, you feel like you know that person. So I'm going to leave that there right at that time. But later on in life, I found out that my grandmother did know her. And my grandmother did not talk about, uh, and why she did not talk about her. It was a year before she passed away, after she came to live with my parents. I was an adult woman by this time and had family of my own. But uh, she just started talking about her. I guess she had a need to share, but she also had a need to share about her personal life and what she dreamed of doing. And my grandmother, uh, whenever I would go to my grandmother's house and I would walk into the dining room and then into the kitchen, in the dining room right there on the side on the buffet would be it was a sheet of music uh, and a picture of W.C. Handy. I don't know if any of you uh, know W.C. Handy, but uh, she wrote lyrics and sent them to him, and he put it on music, on the sheet music, and sent it back to her with his autograph. And that was her prize, her joy. And so when she talked about, she said that she wanted to be an artist. she said that I should have never gotten married because this is what I really wanted to do, was to be an artist, a lyricist, a poet. And but she also talked about Aunt Harriet. She talked about how Aunt Harriet, that she knew Aunt Harriet. And I said, well, you really did? You knew her? And so she said, yes, I did. You know, I said, oh, I said, that's why I would always wonder, why are you calling her Aunt Harriet? I knew enough as a young child, you know, not to say that. So, but she said that, you know, her mother, which was my great grandmother, worked side by side with her. And sometimes Aunt Harriet would, you know, take care of her, um, or, you know, or whatever, those kinds of things. But she knew her. And like I said, everyone lived in that house, the brick house that Aunt Harriet lived in at one time or another. My great grandmother was born in that house. Uh, and so, um, you know, so that made it more personal. And I asked her, I said, well, Grandma, why didn't you ever share any of these things before? Now, see, I'm the youngest of my siblings. So it did not mean that. I always thought, well, you never shared anything, but that didn't mean that she didn't share anything. She could have shared with my other siblings or said something here or there, but I wouldn't, you know, wouldn't know that. But for me, I asked her, I said, well, why didn't you ever share anything? And so I thought I turned this off. Um, And I asked her, I said, well, why didn't you ever share anything? And she said, because it was too close to the time of, you know, freedom. And it was a hard life to live. And they just wanted to be able to live it. And that's where they put all their focus, was on that. So they didn't really have time to sit around and just, you know, just talk about things. But I'm sure that, you know, things were said. Um, and besides, Aunt Harriet had put all of her, not all of her, but a lot of things about her life that she wanted to share about the time past when she was doing the Underground Railroad, the Civil War, and then during all that time and those kinds of things that happened. Because as you know, the reason why she had those things dictated because she couldn't read or write. But, you know, she had it dictated and Sarah Bradford um, wrote them down, but, you know, she did some exaggeration for the audience that she was writing for, and even changed some of the things from one printing to another. If you read the first print, but the first printing, but it was done to help her earn money to take care of the things that she had, the properties and the people, because nothing was ever really for herself. She always gave it to others. So, you know, that was the answer that my grandmother gave me. But what I have found out for myself, as I grow and learn more, is that a lot of things um, that you think you don't know, as you start getting older, it seems like some things start coming back to you. And you remember little things that something that might happen might uh, give you more information or remind you of something. And then you say, where did that come from? But then you remember, and that memory becomes real, and you say, okay, well, that did happen. I did know that. Or, because when I was a little girl in elementary school, they talked about, and I don't know why it was talked about, because we didn't learn African American history in elementary school. or grammar school, as it was called back then. We didn't learn about African American history. So, but it was mentioned. My teacher mentioned it. I can see her today standing at the front of the class, and she mentioned it. And so I said, I knew that Aunt Harriet was my relative and my ancestor. So I raised my hand and I said, "Oh, she's my ancestor." And I don't remember what the teacher said at that time, but I remember a student, a young girl, my age, saying, "Okay, well, if she's your aunt, then the president is my father." And that hurt my feelings because I wasn't believed. And it was then that I said, okay, I will never ever share this with anybody else, because they think you were lying. So I didn't talk about it. But then one more other time when I got to high school, like Lisa read uh, in my bio, that that was the time during the Black Power movement and things like that. And so, we have formed a group called Umoja, and we decided, okay, and it was about good things, just celebrating our history, celebrating who we were, and because all the other students had groups as well, so we had our group too. And but we realized, why don't we have anything being taught about us? We had world history, American history, and everything. And we felt like, well, we're part of American history. So why aren't we talked about? And so taught about that. And, and up until then, um, mostly everything that we received or learned about in our history, that came from our homes. And if it didn't come from home, it came from church. And then in the late 60s and the 70s, it started coming from African American cultural centers that began popping up, and other African American groups that formed to teach us history about us and about Africa and our relationship there. So we decided, we asked about it and about having that done. And it was just like kind of, yeah, we'll ignore it. Yeah, okay, blah, 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 blah. And so then we decided, well, you know what? Let's boycott. And for me, that was something I was hesitant to do. Not because I didn't want to do it, but because I knew what my parents felt about school, about education. And because they always put the fear of God. Don't play hooky, don't be late for class, don't fool around, don't talk, don't do this, don't do that. And so I was strictly about that. And but then I said, you know what, this is important. And I said, I agreed with doing that. And so we boycotted. But that boycott got us what we wanted, because we walked out, and we did it in a very dignified and um, uh, peaceful manner. And so when we came back, they talked to us about what we wanted, and we told them that we wanted African American history as a choice. We also wanted Black literature as a choice. And so we did get that. I don't know to this day if it's still being taught in my high school where I went. Um, I hope it is, but um, we did receive that. And when I told my mom, when I came home from the boycott, after we walked out, she wanted to know, well, why are you home? And I told her what it was, and she said, well, you know how I feel about that and about, school. And she said, but for this reason, she said, okay, but try not to do that anymore. And but it was successful, you know. And was I thinking about Aunt Harriet, what she did during that time? Oh no, I wasn't thinking about that, you know. I was a kid. But when they started to offer it and focused on it, my homeroom teacher um, was I think she's the one that was doing the teaching. And so I'm, you know, the bell rang. It's time to get to your first period. I just got up like I normally did and walking real fast, trying to get to my next class. She stops me and wants to ask me, well, Ernestine, is it true that you are related to Harriet Tubman, that she's your ancestor? And I just stood there looking at her, just dumbstruck, you know, like, where is this coming from? How'd you know this? I don't talk about this. I didn't say anything to anyone. And I just stood there looking at her. And then the next thing I said, yes. And I walked away really quickly. Did I ever ask her how she knew? No, I wish I had. Um, but I never knew where that came from. So, but after that time, I still didn't talk about it because people still didn't believe you. So I didn't do that. And so it kind of like in regards to everything that was happening in the world around Aunt Harriet and the popularity and everything, I kind of like, it's just, she's just my aunt. She's just my ancestor. It's enough that I know. I don't care if anybody else knows or believes it or not. So, you know, I know what she did. I'm happy that she did it and proud of her. And that was it. So that is my story about my relationship with Aunt Harriet and all those kinds of things and knowing her. But I feel like at this time in my life, I really know her, and I really love her. So now, next slide. This is, go back to the other one, please. Right. This is the wet and marshland in Dorchester County, Maryland. Now, when you're looking at this image, I want you to remember this image when I show you another image, because I won't be able to put them side by side. So, but this is the Blackwater Refuge in outside of Cambridge. And this is it. This is where Aunt Harriet was born in March, probably because of a midwife's bill to the owner for writ. That had to be the time that Aunt Harriet was born. So it more than likely she was born the end of February to the beginning of March. She may have even been born March 10th, which is the day she died. We don't know. So, you know, we know from history that when they did that, when they received money, it was, you know, like within a 2 to 4 week period after the birth of a child. So, or preceding it, whatever. But so we think that she was born in March of 1822. And so this is that area. And around that area, like if you go there now, it's pretty much untouched from the way it was when she was there. Somebody had the foresight to not build a lot in that area. And so it's when they built the Underground Railroad Visitor Center and they put in the buildings, the architect did a great job of integrating into the landscape as though it was already there. But the one thing about this, and the reason why I decided to show some of these images because they're important, because what they're saying now is that the marshland and the water will reclaim all of this area. So it'll be underwater at some point within the next, they said 50 years. But they're trying to do things to be able to slow it down. And so I asked the question, which I was really upset. I asked the question, I said, well, what about the center? You know, what about the Underground Railroad Visitor Center? And so they said, oh, well, the way it was built and everything, you'll be able to get to it, but you may have to get to it by rowboat. So, you know, and he laughed. I didn't think it was very funny, but because it was, you know, it's for something that's so horrendous that happened there. It's so peaceful there when you go out, and you can just feel her presence. You can go to the next slide. Okay, this is a place where a major event in her life happened. And I would say pretty much began everything for her. And this is the general store. I do have images of how it looks on the inside. The inside is still, some of it is original and some of it has been, you know, refurbished. But it primarily looks the way it did then. This is where she sustained her head injury. And because she went into the store, she was out on another plantation, which is another story in itself, of how in the region of Maryland, on the plantations or farms, if you want to call them, they allowed their enslaved to go and work with permission on other farms, and sometimes even loan them out to other farms. But when they asked to go work on another farm and got paid, they of course had to give the larger portion to the owner of that, you know, who owned them. And they were able to keep some because she saved her money and purchased, I think, some oxen or cows or whatever. I don't know why she wanted them, but you know, as an enslaved person, but she did. And but when she was on another farm, and they had to go to the store, to the general store, and they were, at the time, they were doing flax seeds, you know, stripping the flax, and you know, and it's very oily. And she said that, you know, like her hair was, you know, all over her head. So, and she didn't want to go to the store looking like that. So she still, even though she was enslaved, she still, you know, looked at herself and, you know, just like any other person, and wanted to look as well as she could. So she, you know, took her oily hands and laid down her hair, and she put a shawl on over her head. And so they went to the store. As they went into the store, there was an overseer in there and another enslaved boy, and he was trying to get away. So this overseer wanted Aunt Harriet to stop him, and she, no, I'm not stopping him. She stepped aside so he could run out, but as she stepped aside for him to run out, in process, there was a 2-pound weight being thrown to make him, you know, to hit him and fail him, and but it hit her instead, and it hit her in the forehead, and it embedded the shawl into the wound. So, you know, as a nurse, I know, you know, about anatomy and everything like that. So, you know, the brain only has 3 layers, and it has a cranium, which is which is a hard shell to protect those 3 layers. But the thing about the brain, and this is why when you have strokes and or a stroke, you have a bleed from one of the arteries or whatever, and it bleeds into that area. It doesn't have space to rest because it's so, the spaces are in the brain, in the cranium, is only just a fraction. So anything that grows in there outside of that is going to put pressure on the brain, and the brain has areas in it that control your body. So wherever that bleed is or whatever, it will impact that part of your body, your speech, your mobility, or whatever. So it hit her in the temple, pretty much on that side, and she bled profusely. But it was by God's intervention that, and his purpose for her life, that it did not kill her. It should have, by all means, you know, naturally, it should have killed her, because it would have killed anyone else. Because the gash went into and fractured the skull, and into that area. So, but she did sustain residual effects from it, where she would drop off to sleep at a moment's notice without being aware. And then when she would wake up, it was as if nothing happened. And when you drop off to sleep like that, it's not you're sitting here and you're sleepy. Oh, I'm sleepy, I'm gonna fall asleep, you know. No, it's not like that at all. And it was narcolepsy, it was a seizure type thing. So she had to, you know, that was with her all of her life pretty much. And and everybody knew it. So, you know, you see that kind of thing, that how that could be dangerous for her when she was on the Underground Railroad. But the purpose was, you know, God had a purpose for her. So you can go to the next slide. Okay. One more thing before we leave that slide. You can just stay where you are. But it was after that time that, a while after that time, that she wished Brodus, who was the owner, she wished that he would die, that the Lord would kill him. And because when she was lying on the bench, he would bring people in to look at her, trying to sell her away. And but she was able to, you know, to become well again, enough to be with the narcolepsy in order to function. But she knew, because the word was out, he's gonna sell you. He's gonna sell you south, just like he sold your sisters south. And slavery anywhere is bad, but they also knew that when you get sold further south, it's even worse. I mean, it's like the place of no return. So she knew that this was, you know, the handwriting on the wall. So what happened was, you know, she also learned from that, when he died, she was so remorseful, and you know, about that, because she felt like she caused his death erroneously. But she learned to not hate a person, but to hate a situation, and to be able to work against that. But what happened was, after that, she and her brothers took off, but they came back because they were afraid. So she came back with them. That was the only time that she allowed anyone that she was going with to trying to seek freedom to do anything like that, to decide, oh, I don't want to do this now. I don't want to do this, so I'm going to go back. She never allowed that to happen again. And this time she took off in 1849 at age 27, and she made it all the way to freedom. So, okay, we can go to, oh yeah. Prior to the, we're going into the time of Civil War. Prior to the beginning of the war, you know, there was rumors of war and everything like that. And prior to this is an image of Reverend Henry Highland Garnett. He was also an Underground Railroad conductor. And she was at his home. And then they were discussing about emancipation and the Civil War. And she had a vision. And she came down and she said, you know, what the vision was, which our people will be free. And so he felt like, no, that's not going to happen. You know, if it is, it won't happen in our lifetime. But then later, when it did happen, everybody was celebrating. And they asked her, well, why aren't you celebrating, Harriet? And she said, well, I already did my celebration. You know, I celebrated back when I had the vision. You know, I knew that it was done. It was completed right then. And see what that is? That's faith. That's the one thing about her. You know, when you're believing, you have to believe that it's already done. And that's how you act. It's already done. And so that's an example, a practical application of her faith. Let's see. Okay, we can go to the next one. Next image. Where do you think this image is? It looks so similar to the other image, but it's not. It's not the same. It's not in the same place. This one is in Beaufort, South Carolina. And I show you this because Aunt Harriet went down after liberating herself, after liberating her family, and taking them up north. And the Fugitive Slave Act was in 1850. So she started taking the family to Canada first, and they stayed there for a while. But she still went into war knowing the peril of what could happen to her. And she did that because of the governor, John Andrews of Massachusetts. And see, you'll hear a lot of different things, but the truth is, and I saw this in his papers where he wrote, where he wanted her to go there to be a spy and a scout. And then he said, if you aren't doing that, then do whatever else is necessary that needed to be done. And Aunt Harriet had a lot of skills. She had nursing skills. She knew how to make medicines from roots and herbs, things that she learned from her mother on the plantation. Because, you know, she and her mother, the children, lived on separate plantations from the father because they were owned by different people. But they did come together at different times. And but she was able to learn that from her mother. And but she also knew how to be she could market. She knew she was an entrepreneur before her time. She knew how to make goods, she knew how to sell them, and she knew who to sell them to. She knew her market. You know, she couldn't read or write, but she was so sharp, so intelligent. She was a strategist. She analyzed, she planned. And you know, she was very discerning of people. You know, she didn't have to talk to you to kind of know what you were about. She could just look at you and watch you move, watch your body language. She paid a lot of attention to that, and that put her in great stead. Um, so she went down there in the spring of 1862 into the bowels of slavery. And she went as a spy and a scout. But because there wasn't, and I'm talking about this discernment now, she was supposed to go on a transport uh, sent, you know, uh, with someone else uh, and arrive at a certain time. And so Governor Andrews wanted to know, well, where did she get there? Where is she? Well, what Aunt Harriet did, she changed the plan because the man that she met, she was supposed to go with him. And she looked at him from, you know, from where she was. She didn't go up to him and talk to him, but she just watched him. And she said, oh, no, I'm not going anywhere with him. And because she could feel that there was some kind of plot or a plan that was being set. And so she decided to go a different way. And she got there, you know, past a little bit past her time. But when she went in just doing nursing right away because of what was happening and what was being needed by the soldiers. You know, because they weren't dying mostly of bullet wounds; they were dying of dysentery and things like that. So she immediately began creating medicines in order to be able to help heal them. But then she started her work that she was called down there to do, which was to be a spy and a scout. She could hide in plain sight. You know, she was very good at disguising herself. She was a small little woman, you know, and when people looked at her, like one account was a guy said, "Oh, you know, when you look at her, she looks dumb with it." You know, he said, but when you get up on top of her and you look her right in the eye, he said those eyes are so piercing. They are so they are sharp. You know that she is about uh-uh. You know, this person knows a lot. And so um, you know, she did had an account of one of Frederick Douglass's sons, because you know both of them were in the Civil War. But this one wrote to his wife and said, you know, I think her name was Amelia. I'm not sure. I can't remember now. But he said, you know, she said, guess who I saw down here? I saw Harriet with being a captain over a gang of scouts. And so, you know, there were, and they name, you can, you know, in the history book, um, they name those uh, scouts because it's even, I think it's in her pension too, where she names them. Um, but you know, what they did was they went out and they got information from the enslaved and other places. And then they brought back that work, and Aunt Harriet analyzed it, strategized it, and then made a plan. That's how the Combahee River raid happened because of all, she's an intelligence gatherer. And that's what they call them today, an intelligence gatherer. And that's what she did, and she did it well. Um, she also, for the newly enslaved, um, um, for the newly enslaved, she taught them how to, she made gingerbread and she made root beer. But she did that for herself at first because to make money. because she stopped going into the commissaries because the other soldiers had to fend for themselves. But she had every right during the Civil War that a commissioned officer had. She could travel at will. She can go in the commissary. And if you go and you read about the commissaries during that time, because commissaries, I think, started in 1825, somewhere around there. But it talks about what they were, and also the soldiers that were enlisted, they had to get their foods and all those things from vendors that could charge them a lot of money just for basic needs or food. So she did that, but then she taught the newly enslaved how to use that, she set up wash houses. She set up field kitchens to teach them how to use, to cook and to do laundering and things like that, and who was their market. The soldiers were. They were a captive audience, and so that's what she did. And she only had $200 that she ever got from them. So that is what that she did pretty much during her time during the Civil War. And then, it culminated in leading the raid, the Combahee River raid, which, she did lead. 150 to 300 soldiers went in, and let's see, what image? You can go to the next image. Okay, these are soldiers. This is the Negro Regiment from Beaufort, South Carolina. This is just an example of them, and who might have been on that boat on the Lincoln gunboat with her. And so you can go to that next image as well. Okay, this is an image of the Lincoln gunboats, and there were 3 of them. One ran aground, and the other one, this is it here. And she was on I think the first one. And of course, I don't know, in Beaufort, South Carolina, you can go there, and they have a bridge that's named after her, and it goes over the river. And but if you look at the river snakes, and it's tight, so you can see why that one boat ran aground, because it's the turns and what you have to do in order to be able to navigate it. And but they started this, I think, on June 2nd and culminated on the 3rd of June in 1863, and they destroyed that money making business. They destroyed it all, and so that's all. Let me see. That's all I have to say about that, because it's a lot. I could go on and on and on about that, because there's so much, but I'm not going to do that right now. But so we can go to the next slide. Okay, after the Civil War, it was a while before, even after 1865, she still stayed down in Beaufort and Hilton Head and all those areas around there. And because she worked with the Freedmen's Bureau, and then she was supposed to become matron for Fortress Monroe in the hospital there, but that didn't manifest. Why, I don't know. But anyways, they would not allow. She needed to go home because she got word about her parents, and that people, in the home didn't have any food. They were not having enough. So she needed to go home just to be able to see how they were, but that couldn't happen. They wouldn't let that happen right at that time. But when she did finally go home, there was an altercation on the train, and she, was thrown off of that, and broke her arm and a lot of other things. But she didn't get off willingly. She, fought back. And but this is her brick home. This is the place that she stayed in first when she came to Auburn. And it belonged, that property, 7 acres, it belonged to William Seward. William Seward was first a senator, then the secretary Secretary of State. And then he allowed her to purchase the home. Now, actually, it was his wife, William Seward's wife, that owned it, because the law had passed where it began, women could own property. So she had, or inherited property, and she inherited that property, and to sell it to Aunt Harriet was illegal. But she felt that, William Seward being who he was, that wouldn't happen. But it was sold to Aunt Harriet for $1,200. $1,200. Yeah, $1,200. And did she have a hard time paying that mortgage? She sure did. Life was not easy. But she had property. She had land. And what I was taught growing up, if you have land, you have wealth, because that property can always be turned into money. But a lot of other things go along with that. So, but she had pigs, she had chickens, she had an apple orchard. She had a garden. She had what else did she have? You see this brick house? It wasn't originally brick. It was originally clapboard. But what occurred was it caught on fire. And so her husband, Nelson Davis, rebuilt it with the bricks that was on the property, because they found a brick making opportunity that was on the property. So this is the property, I think, which is so confusing, because we didn't pay attention to this. So some of this is coming of knowing which is which, from research and archaeology. But the brick house, this brick house, I am very well aware of and very sure of, because this is in the will that she wrote, naming my great-grandmother, Mary Gaskin, and another niece as recipient of this home and of the 7 acres. And it says in the will, share and share alike. However, when Aunt Harriet passed away, there were things against the estate. Could they pay for that? No, they couldn't. So someone else was able to pay for those things, and then they were able to get the property for $1. And that's where it went. So when we went, let me see, is that the next one? Yeah, if you can go to the next one. This should be No, that's the wrong one. Can you go back one? I'm looking for the White House.
I don't know. Maybe it's not in
White
here.
House, the White House should be after this one.
That's it.
Is there a way for me to add that without any problems?
Let's see if I can.
I have it here on my
Oh, yeah, if you pull it up and you can share your screen. Or let me see if you had sent me. Is the photo called White House or what is the photo called?
White House.
Yeah, I didn't get that one.
It was in the email because I pulled these off.
Okay.
I pulled these
If
off.
you do you have it on your computer there?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so then if you just open that and I can stop my share and you can share it. Just
Okay.
go down to screen share, the green.
Now, what do I just pull the
The
image?
photo. Yeah. It should come up as an option to click on.
Oh, it won't do it. Let me see. Let me try. Can you see it?
No, okay, it's coming.
Can you see it?
It's opening. It's just there it is. There it is.
Okay. All right. This is the White House. And this is what's confusing even to me, because she had purchased first 7 acres, which when you go to Auburn, on Harriet's property borders Fleming and Auburn. They're right next to each other. Like you just step over, take 1 foot, another step, and you're in Fleming versus Auburn. So that's how it is. But this has to be Auburn because if you go down the street, if you're standing here in front of this where we are, and you go to your right, go down a block, then that's the street where my grandparents lived and a lot of the family, Chapman Avenue. And so this has to be all Auburn. Now, if you look directly across, you're standing on this porch and you look directly across, that's where the brick house is. So that had to be on the, this house has to be on the 25 acres. That's the way I see it. That may not be the way it is, but that's the way I see it. And on Harriet's house, the brick house, had to be the 7 acres, on the 7 acres, because behind that is the barn. So this house, she was a place that ended up where she let people who didn't have a home have a home. And so a place that they could call home, because what was important to her was for people to have dignity, to have a place to be, to live, and things like that, and be taken care of. So that kind of thing was deeply on her mind, and was important to her. But when you go to the park, to her property, or when other people are talking about her property, like I was just reading about how someone went to the property And they did a video and they started labeling things. And I'm looking at it, I'm saying, oh my goodness. They're creating a myth. They're continuing telling the wrong story. And so I'm going to close this out and go back to you, Cher. I'm going to stop the share. Okay. Is that all? Is that how I can do it? Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you can go to the next one. This is another part of the property. And this was on the additional 25 acres. So now, of course, like I said, I, as a young child, and even when I, go to visit now, and we go to the home, that's what we call going to the home. We don't see this, but we see the White House, we see the brick house. Now, when I was growing up and grandma would say, we're going to go visit Aunt Harriet, we knew, okay, we're going up to the home, then we're going to go to the cemetery. But like I said before, my great grandmother lost the brick home because she and the other niece, because they could not pay what was leaning against the property. So as I was growing up, that wasn't even recognized or a part, because the church did not purchase that again until in the 90s. And this property here, this was called John Brown Hall, or as I remember it, John Brown Home for the Aged and Infirmed. The White House, people are calling, saying that that's where she lived. That's erroneous. She never lived there. Her home was always the brick home. That's where she lived. Now, when she died in this home. And you see all the people around her. Now, my great grandmother is in that image. She's to the left, standing up on the second row, the woman with the white blouse. That's my great grandmother. That's Mary. And but that place is a part of the 25 acres. And that's what I'm understanding based upon the research. Now, my aunt, who wrote a book, Joyce Jones, wrote a book. And when she was writing her book and researching it, at the time, what was still there was the foundation. You can't really, this is not really a good image that I have of it, because the bottom part is really kind of like a brick cobblestone. And maybe you can see it if you look to your left, a more detailed image of it. But my aunt was standing, she took a picture standing on top of that foundation. And because the top part was gone. Now, from what I understand, that the top part of the home, the part that burned down, this whole building used to be a place, a dormitory, where the people that worked in the brick business before, because that was there on the property before they purchased it. That's where they stayed. And but she turned it into a home for the aged. And she was when she was 74 when she purchased this. Now, the story behind that, and I remember because I found this out when I was in school for art, and I was doing an image. I was printing, and because I remember her story about how she bid on this property, on the 25 acres. she said that she was like a blackberry in a pan of milk. And she was sitting back in a corner, way back in the corner. And like I said, she was barely 5 feet, but she was also always good at hiding herself, camouflaging herself, making herself into something else so that people didn't even pay attention to her or recognize her. And she kept bidding on the property. And it went higher and higher. She kept bidding and kept bidding and kept bidding until finally she outbid everybody else. And I think it got up to like $1,400, $1,450, something like that. And I'm not even gonna say what they said when they asked, well, who was the final bidder? And she yelled out that it was her. And they turned around and looked at her, and they said they called her to end, well, how's she gonna do anything? You know, how's she gonna pay for this? And so she said what she believed. I'm going home and I'm praying to God, you know, to be able to get what she needed in order to be able to purchase this home. So, but she did get it. She did purchase it. And but she could not really take care of it, afford it. I mean, she was 74 when she purchased this, around that age. And she died in 1913. But you know, she was taking care of so many people, you know, more than just family, but other people. And she had she even had a business where she had pigs, and the pigs, she was like the garbage dump in a way. She would let the pigs eat the garbage of the community. So she was the garbage man doing that kind of thing. And but one time, and there's a paper account of it in the newspaper, and I forgot what paper it was, but it talked about 40 hogs that she lost because it ate rat poison. Somebody put rat poison in their garbage, and she ate, and they ate it, and they died. So that ended that. But you know, she had, you know, some bricks, and she had some other things, and what my grandmother remembers is going with her to deliver laundry. I know that she still did cleaning of people's homes. You know, she did anything she could that was within reason and everything in order to be able to support all those people, and keep them, you know, keep them together. So she had to end up deeding the property to the AME Zion Church, who has it now. They have the entire property. And they did a partnership with the church that she went to. That church, you know, like I said, that, you know, as and I should have put the picture of that in it, the newly restored by the National Park Service, the church itself. Beautiful. But that was the church, because there were two churches. First, she went to one in the early years for a few years, but then she ended up at Thompson Memorial, and that's where she was for years, decades, and that's where all my family went. They went to that church, and when I would go to visit, and you know, I stayed summers with my grandmother. And we would go to church every Sunday, and we went to that church. And the last person in our family was my grandmother, who was buried from that church. My mother took her body back home and had the service there. And my grandmother is buried in the cemetery where all the rest of the family is, and Aunt Harriet is as well. But the renovated church, yes, and parsonage, it is beautiful. It's across or behind, I'm gonna say next to it, next to the cemetery. And it's beautiful. So I'm coming to the end of things, what I'm gonna say, but I would say this to you, If you're, oh, I have to say one more thing, but I'll say that after this. If you're interested in really knowing about Aunt Harriet, and this is her before she died, in the wheelchair, 1930, around 1910, 11, no, around 1912. Um, and you know, she suffered, you know, she had arthritis and like that, but she was still, you know, sharp with her mind. Um, and and just, you know, just loving people, taking care of her. And but if you want to really uh follow her life and where she went and really understand and get to know where all those places are, you have you start with Cambridge, where you have the byway that takes you her trip, her how she liberated herself. It's called the byway, and that takes you all the way into to Philadelphia, to William Still. And because we did the second half of it this past, not this past summer, but the summer before that. And no, it was this past summer. And we went all the way to Philadelphia, and we saw the two homes of uh, Still, and the one that they would have gone to. And but then that's the part that's in the first leg of her life. Then you go to St. Catharines, Canada. And in Niagara Falls, they have, uh, with the Amtrak station, a place that is right next to the foundation of the suspension bridge, which takes you across to Canada. Now, this suspension bridge had a train track on it. So Aunt Harriet would take that train across that bridge. And there's a great story that talks about Joe, who was on that train and what happened to him. So I would tell you to read that story. It's fascinating. Um, and then she comes back, brings the family back to Auburn, and she purchases the rest of these properties and everything like that for the family to stay there, to live. No one went far away from her. Everyone moved very close to her, around her. So if you, and there's a book about Cayuga County, you can go to that book and read, and it names a lot of our family and where they lived. Everybody lived right around her. They didn't go far. Even my grandmother didn't go far, and my Aunt Harriet was gone by this time. But my grandmother, when she got married, lived down the street. Seward himself lived down the street, because on State Street, if you go down a mile, and as you're going down that road, those are mansions. Even at the top of my grandmother's street, and I would always look at this place. We would go from my grandmother's house, and it always went up a hill. And at the right was a big yellow and white, beautiful house. It cornered Chapman Avenue and State Street. It was a mansion, you know, during the Victorian era. So, you know, Aunt Harriet lived to your right as you came up that Chapman Avenue to State Street. And the next thing I want to say are her recent awards. I don't know if any of you know that the most recent happened. She was awarded. She was commissioned Brigadier General um, uh, of the Army. Now I have that image. Can we share again for a minute?
This image?
No, it's on my desktop.
Oh, on your desktop. Oh, sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
So what do I do now? I have something on here is replace current share, allow.
Yeah.
What do I click on? Allow?
Yes. And choose your photo as you clicked the green button for share screen.
Mhm. Share. Let me see if it comes up.
Okay. Oh,
Can you see it?
yes.
Yeah, that's the commission. And she received 1 star, because that's what brigadier generals have, 1 star. And this citation and a medal. She got a medal as well. So this was the last thing that she received. Prior to that, she received and I was the recipient of this. She received the naming of a ship after her, which is being built, a Navy ship. And that will be that'll be completed within the next 3 years. And prior to that, she received the Knowlton Medal Award for integrity in the Army. Even though our women could not be formal members of the Army back then, but they felt that they needed to acknowledge her and acknowledge her abilities and what she was able to do for the Union during the Civil War. Aunt Harriet stands for the symbol of democracy. Okay, how do I stop share? Stop share.
Right.
Aunt Harriet stands for the symbol of democracy. And what she told during the Civil War when she was fighting, what she told Lincoln, what he ought to know is that he would never win the war. God would never allow him to win the war if he did not first free the slaves and then allow them to fight. So she was right. So, but like I said, the governor of John Andrews knew that she was somebody with her assets that they needed in order to be able to for the Union to win the war. So thank you for um, allowing me to share
Thank
with.
you. Thank you, Ernestine. It's been so interesting. And we have time now. We've had many comments and some questions in the chat if you want to look through. But I could, and we also, if you want to raise your hand, we can bring you on to ask Ernestine a question. One question is, what happened to her adopted daughter?
Gertie. Um, we don't know. And now this is where I'm going to say, knowing who she is, who Aunt Harriet is, in that will, she would have been in that will if I think if she was still alive or still around. So we don't. No one knows what happened to her. It was just like she was there one day and then another, she wasn't any longer.
Hmm. Okay. Um, all right. Who has some questions? You can, oh, Kim Fogg.
Yeah. Hey,
You
Miss
want-
Ernestine, that was absolutely fabulous.
Well, thank you.
I am a huge Harriet Tubman lover. I actually, by the creation of God, I was invited to be able to create a coin from the presidential coin maker for my nonprofit work in Africa. And so he asked me, what I wanted the coin to look like. And I basically said I wanted to look like my logo and the work that I've been doing. And all of a sudden I got this message and said, what about a Harriet Tubman legacy coin? And I said, who's that talking to me? And I honestly, I didn't really know that much about Harriet. Of course I did growing up, but really didn't know. And I just had the most beautiful opportunities to learn more about Harriet. I actually was able to unveil my legacy coin at the museum in Cambridge. I was able to, in Cambridge, Maryland.
Well aware of Cambridge, Maryland.
In Cambridge, Maryland. And I would love to gift you one. It's a beautiful, this side represents the Underground Railroad. It has her birth date, her enslaved date, and her death date. I actually have January 29th as her birth date because my birthday is January 28th. So I was like, oh, that's really good.
So you're gonna make her close to you on your birthday, right?
And then on the back, I put the National Museum of African American of History and Culture. And this side represents Harriet breaking the chains of slavery.
Yeah.
And it's been gifted to 5 African presidents. Most recently, President Kagame in Rwanda about a month ago through Reverend Weaver. And Lisa, who was the oldest Tuskegee Airman that just passed recently?
General McGee.
General McGee.
Yeah, so the Silver Spring Library is in his honor, named in his honor also.
So I would love to, and so this is actually the frame certificate, and so I would love to connect with you. So if Lisa can connect us, where are you living?
I live in Northwest DC, Upper Northwest.
You live down the street from me. I live on the end of 16th Street and Grace Church Road.
Are you in Maryland?
In Silver Spring. Yeah. Yeah. Right in Silver Spring. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love to connect with you. I took a bunch of my friends up to Cambridge and we did the whole tour and they all came back with a glow. I mean, they just felt the love, they felt Harriet, and it was just so amazing. And I have so many people asking me if I could do that again because people really felt her spirit. I mean, we went to the Broadest Farm, we went to the store. Actually, there was a restaurant that was opening at the time called Minty's.
Oh yeah.
I'm not quite sure if it's still there.
It's still there. But every time we're down there, they're not open.
They're closed, right? They're closed. Yeah. So anyway, yeah,
it's a beautiful place.
It is
very peaceful. You can just, I mean, because you know that you step out there and she could have this is where she could have walked.
Yes, and that's what everybody was saying. We are walking in the footsteps of Harriet, and that was what was so powerful. Yeah. So thank you so.
Lisa can give you my info.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so much for such an incredible lecture about Harriet. I just have been so excited about today, and I didn't think I was going to be able to make it because I have a program in our schools, and yay, there was a snowstorm.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kim. Good to see you.
See you too.
And who else has a question or comment? We have Leah Evans. Hi, Leah.
Mute. Thank you so much, Ernestine. So inspired by your aunt's story. I want you to know that my nephew just loves Harriet Tubman. He's a senior in high school. And when he came from Michigan to visit me, we walked here. I live near Sandy Spring, where we walked that trail back there. where Harriet had taken part of her Underground Railroad, comes through Sandy Spring, Maryland. My question is, what's the best autobiography to read of her life, on her life?
Well, I like Kate Clifford Larson's book, Bound for the Promised Land. And I like it a lot because it tells you about it connects her to her community. You get to be able to see the community she also comes from and how important that was. Because and you get amazed because of the things that how different life was from because we all think, oh, we think about Gone with the Wind, that kind of thing. We in terms of architecture and kind of things that happen, we think of Gone with the Wind. But when you read her book and you understand the differences between regions and how it depends on what is being planted, because there was tobacco, so you had different things there, and the homes weren't they weren't elegant and over the top, like Gone with the Wind. They weren't like that. But it also, the community they knew each other. Like my great, let's see, let me go back. Mary's mother was Anne Marie. Anne Marie was that infant daughter that was left. Now, Anne Marie, because they all, like I said, they all knew one another. Aunt Harriet knew a lot of them. Anne Marie ended up marrying Thomas Eliot. He was from the Pritchard Meredith farm, which his descendants still live there, and I've met them. Thomas Eliot is a part of the infamous Dover 8. That was, they were escaping because Aunt Harriet couldn't take everybody all the time. So, and you'll see where Bradford says 300, but 19 trips. Well, scholars only will back what they can document. Kate Larson documented I'm gonna say 70 people, 13 trips. But that doesn't mean that all the people that she also told, Aunt Harriet did, she gave them direction. She let them know her network, because that was important. You had people that you connected to. Because that's what the Underground Railroad was a connection of network people. And so the person that she used all the time, and he was a Black man, she sent him and the other 7 men, to go there as a contact, to begin there and to continue on. Well, he turned them in for money. And I'm remembering it's something like $3,000. And I'm saying, wow, that's a lot of money for them. But anyways, they arrested him and they put him in a jail that was I think it was maybe 40 feet off the ground, something like that. But they escaped from there, and they jumped out of the window. Now, Thomas Elliot ended up being my great grandfather, married Anne Marie, but he didn't marry Anne Marie until they got to Canada or Auburn. I think it happened in Auburn when they got. But Aunt Harriet knew Thomas Elliot before, she even gave him direction of where to go. Because like I said, they visit each other's farms for different reasons, work or whatever. So Thomas Elliot wanted to go get the guy. He didn't want to let him go. No. He turned us in. We're going back to get him. Well, everybody else said, "Oh no, forget him. Let's go. We're out. Let's go now. Let's go." So, they made it to freedom. But yeah, you hear all the kind of stories and connections through her book about the community and even the community right now in Cambridge, which is so exciting about what they're doing. They're starting to do their own genealogical research and looking into different things down there that of other people that were also connected to those other people that were enslaved there. So, it's just a wonderful thing that they're doing. So yeah, that's the reason why I like her book a lot. And then of course, I like Jean Jimenez. I like her book. And the other one, okay, my aunt wrote a book, like I said, on my family line to Aunt Harriet. And her name is Joyce E. Jones. And what is it? Let me see. That's her title is so Beyond the Underground. And her daughter did the writing with her. Aunt Joyce did all the research with her at the time, but her daughter continues the research and does it with her. And her name is Michelle Jones Galvin. So that book, Harriet Tubman, the Moses of Her People, that Sarah Bradford wrote. You can start there. I mean, it's always a good read because it is what Aunt Harriet dictated to her, but but also it's a lot of hype too. Because she was trying to sell a book, but those Kate Larson's book and Jimenez, broadly that talks about all the research and about Aunt Harriet at that time, the things that were going on. Things that as a family we really wouldn't know about unless Aunt Harriet shared all that. Like I said, she did it one time in that book. So that was a good starting point for others to do research and go further and then find out really what was true and what wasn't.
Well, I thank you so much, and hopefully, I'm sure you'll be back, and thank the organizers of this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, Leah.
Take care.
We have a few more questions. We have people with hands up, but even before that, Wendy Woodland with Preservation Montgomery asked if she could ask a question. Wendy, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I don't know why my video won't come up. Forgive me.
Okay, no worries.
But yeah, Ms. White, it's a pleasure to see you. And Lisa has been trying to connect us. I'll have you know that my granddaughter is also in this Zoom meeting because we wanted to hear your talk and we wanted to ask if you would have opportunity to speak at her school. So I'm the person that's been communicating with you, this past week. Yeah.
Where's her
So,
school?
St. Martin's, it's St. Martin's Parochial School in Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, Lisa can give you my information, and it's all about timing.
I understand. I can imagine you must be very busy at this time. And I also wanted to mention that the International Spy Museum is hosting for Black History Month an exhibit called The Sisterhood of Spies, which highlights your aunt and women like Josephine Baker and Mata Hari. So, her importance to our national history, it's brilliant.
Yeah,
So,
well, the museum also has a podcast called Spyware,
yeah.
and that's going to come out on the 18th. And
Okay.
I'm a part of that. They interviewed me along with, and this is another book for uh, to purchase if you want to know more about the Civil War and um, her role in it, as well as the Gullah Geechee people in that area. And it's called Combi, and it's by Dr. Etta Fields Black. That's a book that just came out. And it's good. It's good. So um,
Okay.
those that
Thank
that
you.
would be good. But the podcast comes out on the 18th.
Okay,
So she's a
brilliant.
part of, she was interviewed. So what they're going to do is put us, splice, edit it, put it together, that kind of thing. So
Excellent, excellent. Well, look for our email. And I know Nia is trying to ask you a question too, so she's in the chat line somewhere. Okay,
Yes,
thank you very much.
you're welcome.
yes, thank you, Wendy and Nia, your granddaughter, added a nice invitation for Ernestine in the chat, but I will
Brilliant.
also send a connection email to you both. And Wendy works with Preservation Montgomery, so we collaborate a lot on history programs. So next up, we have another history maven in our community who's just wonderful. And whenever we get on the phone, I learn so much whenever we chat in person too. So SSTCI board member Pat Tyson, who's a community leader based in Littonsville community.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah.
Pat.
Oh, hi there, everybody. Tina, thank you. That was so wonderful. I've heard you speak a couple of times at the Civil War Roundtable, and of course, we do a different side of your Aunt Harriet, but it was, you brought us to the family part of her and, just her, the lady who she really is. So thank you so much for
Well,
that presentation today.
I knew you'd be on, Pat.
I had a problem getting on in the beginning, and Doug had to send me another link. And so I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I saw Ernestine on TV not that long ago, just a few weeks back, and I thought, oh my gosh, she's local. She would be so great to invite. And I wrote on her Facebook page, please come and do a talk, which is she probably gets this happening all the time. And then she contacted Pat and said, who is this person from Silver Spring? And are they a legitimate person? Thank you to Pat for verifying that.
Right. That's the same thing that happened to me with the Spy Museum. They put it in my chat and it popped up on I was making another call and it popped up and I'm looking at, what is this? And because there's so many people now, I don't go on Facebook a lot. I have an account, but I don't go on it a lot. And so, you have Messenger on there and people do message you, but I don't do that anymore because one time or a couple of times, somebody messaged me and I started to respond. But then I couldn't tell the first time. But then when I responded and they came back with, I'm saying, this is wrong. Something's happening. So I would call that person. Did you just message me? And they said, no. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. So, but anyways,
Yeah, the
keep
best
trying.
advice I can give to stay safe online is to hide your friends list, because that's how these scammers will copy your friend's account and then contact you and pretend to be your friend. So that doesn't mean you got hacked. It's just that they copied your friend's name and maybe photo. So just hide your friends list, privacy settings. Okay, great. Doris, we have try to get folks in here.
Yes,
you
can
have
you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I enjoyed the presentation and I really just wanted to know how to get in touch with you as a speaker. My church is interested in my AMEZ Zion Church is interested in having you as a speaker in the future, not the next week or so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Black History, Month, February is not the only time that
Yeah. Mhm.
share. But what AME Zion are you a member?
Union Wesley A.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Uh-huh. So I've been to Dorchester and Cambridge a couple of times, interested in coming back. So as I said, we're trying to come up with some ideas for our church activity, and we're AME Zion, so I knew Harriet Tubman was. So I was trying to see if you were available anytime in the future.
Just let me know, give me information. Lisa can give you my information because you have to let me know. Usually I want people, when you want me to speak or something like that, you have to you should do it by email so that
Okay.
Do things according to that.
Yeah, feel free to email me if you'd like to get in touch with Ernestine. Thank you,
Okay.
Doris. Thank you for joining us. And there were a few
All
other
right. Thank you.
comments. Okay, thanks. There was someone asking about her suffragist work in the chat about Harriet Tubman's work later in life as a suffragist. I mean, she did so much. It's incredible. I was just reading her just her Wikipedia page and reminded of all that she did. I mean, she was the reason I think she was awarded the Brigadier General commendation naming was because of her scouting and reconnaissance during the Civil War and helping 700 soldiers, Union soldiers, get freed. And yeah, and then her head injury also was incredible. At a later age, her head injury was hurting her more. And she went to Boston and had brain surgery without any anesthesia. And she said they basically opened up her skull and the doctor lifted her brain and it gave her some relief. But then she was frail, I believe, after that. But I mean, she just bit down on a bullet like she had done as a nurse in the field of Civil War time.
That's how they had to do it.
Yeah. And that wasn't that long ago, just in the early part of the, century, the last century, 1900s.
But as far as the suffragettes, she did lend her voice. That part of her life, that part of the life for even African American women. There was a big split because what happened was they decided in order to appease the women, the white women from the South, they had to separate from the African American woman. And so they decided, well, you know what? We're going to do our own thing. And so they did their march and everything else right alongside them, not behind them, but they said, no, right alongside of you. And, but Aunt Harriet did not get involved to the extent that Susan B. Anthony and I forgot the other person's name. Because I was on the float with her great granddaughter or great granddaughter. But they, you know, she lent her voice to the movement, and she did do speeches and talked about things and like that. And she was in support. She was in support of the women getting the vote. But as you know, I mean, as well was Frederick Douglass. But what happened was the still male dominated. He agreed that the African American male should get the vote, the right to vote, before women got the right to vote. If they were going to do it like that, the male should get the right to vote first. For the African American male, if they were going to allow the African woman to do it, of course, yes, because you didn't have any rights, so you needed to be on board to get on board in order to be recognized. That needed to happen quickly, so that happened, of course, with the 15th Amendment. So yeah, she was in support of, of that, but that made a split with Susan B. Anthony and, and Frederick Douglass and all.
Great. Oh, there's so many thank yous and postings of various books about Harriet Tubman. What was your favorite book about her?
You're asking me again?
Yes.
Well, I had a few. I had a couple. Kate Larson's book, Bound for the Promised Land, and Jean Jimenez's book, for different reasons. I mean, because they're different type of books about Aunt Harriet, and they're both, full of information.
Okay. Jean Jimenez is the other. Okay. Oh, Humes. Okay. So both of them are in the chat, and you can save the chat.
It's her book.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Humes, Jean M. Humes, and it's called Harriet Tubman: The Life and the Life Stories.
Right. Great. And did she write her memoir?
Who, Aunt Harriet?
Mm-hmm.
No, she couldn't write.
She never learned to write. Okay. I'm just struck by how gifted she was emotionally and just street savvy, and very smart and resourceful in spite of not having a formal education. So that was just something innate in her.
Well, I mean, she had a purpose.
Mhm.
God, she, her faith was the biggest part of her life. And
Mhm.
it was what drove her. And she really embraced the plan that God had for her life. And she had the faith for it. I mean, if you watched the movie Harriet, a lot of people, when that was happening, oh my God, people wanted me to come and talk about that all the time. And they would show the movie and then talk about it, and people wanted to know was this true? Was that true? And so I would tell them, as it's a movie, it's entertainment, and they have to there were things in there that were factual and condensed, because, you know, if not, then it would be more than 2 hours long, and you couldn't have that for a movie. But there were things in there that were very accurate. And the most accurate part of it, which I love, is the fact that about her faith. And you saw her practical applications of her faith in the movie. You saw that, you know, because I mean, that's the one part I like about the Sarah Bradford book, because Aunt Harriet talks about God a lot, and she gives glory to God. She lets you know, it wasn't me, it was him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So she's, you know, she's just a great woman of, you know, inspiring, and she's selfless. She didn't think about her needs. She thought about other people's needs, you know, and that's what God wants us to do. That's why we're here on earth. It's not for us, it's for the other people. He
Mm-hmm.
wants to use us as a vehicle. He takes care of us, but he also works through us. And you know, he works through us in order to be able to share his love with other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, she was definitely an inspiration for that. And I mean, I just, you know, we have every time I hear something about her, I've renewed interest and learned something new. There's so much to learn in her. How old was she when she passed?
91.
91 years. Right. Yeah, she did so much and is tied to so much of our history. Um, And
But
Sandra Schmidt, I wanted to mention, is a quilter and made a quilt in tribute. Sandra, did you want to say something? It's at the Harriet Tubman Museum and Education Center. Would you like to?
Yes. Hi, this is Sandra, and I'm part of the National African American Quilts Guild. And we donated a quilt, and there were several quilters who did blocks that honored the Harriet Tubman byways along the Maryland shore. And there are different byways in this book, and we selected locations along the byway. And I just happened to select the general store and made a block, and other quilters did other areas along the byway, and it is now at the museum and educational center, the smaller one.
yeah, that's it might be small in size, but it's large, because if that hadn't happened, the way that got started, if those 3 people, you know, there were a little bit more people with it, but there were 3 main people. If they had not started that and kept her name alive down there, you wouldn't have anything about Harriet on the Eastern Shore.
Mm.
So,
Well,
and then even the Underground Railroad Visitor Center, they acknowledge that it is really, because it started out as the Harriet Tubman organization, and then it became the museum, the education and museum. But yeah, if it hadn't been for that organization keeping her name alive, it wouldn't be anything Harriet on the Eastern Shore. So they're the
and it was an
beginning.
honor to do it. It was an honor to do it, and it's there. And I think sometimes it travels to different places. But yeah, and so for you to tell the story, more of the story about the general store really touched my heart because that was the one that I had selected.
All right,
So
well,
thank you so much.
you're welcome. Is it there now?
You know, it may be again, it travels, so I'm not sure if it's
Where's it
actually
travel
at
to?
the center, just different locations if people want to. I think if the curators there may have a place where it goes.
So it stays in
To
the
share.
area though.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yes.
Mhm.
And we, the National African American Quilt Guild, donated that to that center.
Mhm.
And that guild has members around the United States.
Yeah, can you give your information to Lisa for me, please?
I will, absolutely.
And was Sandy Hassan a part of that quilt making?
No, she was not part of that quilt making, but I was on last night. And
Yeah,
I am
good to
also
see you
part of
again.
Yahoo. So yes,
Yes, so we'll see you on, you'll be part of Tuesday's presentation then.
yes,
On
yes,
Tuesdays.
yes.
Great. Good to
So
see you.
Lisa, I'll give you my information.
Yes,
I'll
just
put
send
it in the
me
chat.
a reminder and I'll connect you with Ernestine.
Where's the
Okay,
group
all right.
located? Where's your group located?
So the founders are in Texas, but again, we have members all across the United States. I live in Maryland, so I'm your neighbor. Um, I live in Upper Marlboro,
Uh-huh. Okay,
but they're members all over the United States.
okay.
And the
Great.
Yahoo Quilt Guild is actually in Prince George's County.
Okay.
Great. Well, good to see you, Sandra. And
I'll put my information in the chat, Lisa.
yes, please do. Thank you again. We have
Thank you.
time for one more question from Sue Melnick.
Hi. Well, I was very inspired by the fact that her life seems to be a series of push forward and faith, hit setback, push forward and faith, hit setback, push forward and faith, hit setback. Her whole life. Wow. I'm just amazed and inspired by that. And thank you for sharing that. I have sort of an odd question here. Do you know if it seems like if she didn't know how to read and she didn't have the maps, did did she have a photographic memory? And does she have a lot of do a lot of your relatives have really good also that she could be a spy and hide herself in large groups? She seems to be sort of very, very brilliant, both spatially and the way she carried her body and stuff. Do any of your relatives, like, are they dancers or something? Do they sort of have that gift too?
Well, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of my family line. No, there are no dancers. But we, do have my grandchildren, my children, they're, honors, they were honor students and things like that. But what I will say to your question, which I did not go into, I talked about her mother and her mother's influence upon her. Her father was a supervisor timberman on the Thompson plantation. That's who he was owned by. And that's where he resided. And so he lived close to the water. He had his own cabin close to the water. And because that's the way they took the logs out. And then up the canal, then onto the river and up to Baltimore. But she came to stay with her father a lot and was with him a lot. And he taught her. He's the one that taught her about the landscape.
Oh.
And that the landscape talks to you. He's the one that taught her about the North Star and all those things and how to read the landscape. She was very sharp where that was concerned. How to read the landscape, how to read the waterways and all those. She knew all the waterways. That's why in that film, that water, people asked me, did she really jump like that? When she said that, I said, no, she didn't do that. But I said, what it is, I think, was a metaphor of her knowledge of the waterways. Because also in the movie, it tells of us of a time where she talks about in her book that she came, she was going one way, the Holy Spirit, she stopped, Holy Spirit spoke to her, no, go another way, go this way. But it brought her to a body of water that she did not know. And she knew mostly all the body of waters around her, but she didn't know that one. And so she knew, well, God is directing me here. So I know that he's not going to let me down. So she waded out into the water and kept going until it stopped. And it stopped, I think she said at her shoulders or either under her armpits. And that's when she told them, motion, come on across. Because that was the only way they were going to get to freedom that time, because the dogs and the men were out the other way that she normally would go. So she knew how to read the landscape and what was happening in the landscape. And that came from her father. But also at the same time, everything came from God. Everything. She trusted him. She relied on him. She communed with him. She listened to him. She obeyed him. So that's how she did.
Wow. It reminds me of Mother Earth and Father Sky, of the Native Americans, who very connected to the land and very connected to God at the same time.
Can I just say that, that's the real value of a question and answer session, because you get to know so much more about the person that the subject is about from the questions and the answers. So thank you, Lisa.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again, Pat, and all of our board members in the audience, Ray Fudge, Brenda Bunting, Katie O'Neill, and forgive me if I'm missing anyone else. My mom is tuning in from San Diego, Barbara Nasita. She's also likes our programs. And if you would like to donate, we have our donation link to PayPal. I appreciated the question from someone, how to support programs like this. Yes, someone reminded me here, or reminded us in the chat, today is was it the 216th birthday of Abraham Lincoln? Where is this? We have so many comments in the chat. It's hard to look through. I saw it. Today is Lincoln's birthday. Did someone see that? Oh, the 216th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, by carrying out his legacy in the continued fight for democracy and truth. Okay, well, we could go on and on talking about Harriet Tubman. We're all big fans of your aunt, and we really sure appreciate all of your personal stories and sharing with us, Ernestine, and I hope you're going to come back to our Around the World Bazaar. I know you came last year to see the Freed Ladies, and we also have Black Voices Through Poetry with Brenda Bunting and other wonderful poets that will be performing there. And I put that in the chat. So thank you so much again. We will have the video of this available eventually on SSTCI's YouTube page. And we look forward to inviting you back for more. Thank you so much, Ernestine.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you again to everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Right. Bye-bye.
Take care.